This is Howard Innes with another episode from the Herp Workers Meeting 2024. This one was recorded on the Sunday, and it's quite a reflective episode, and it has conversations with a number of people that were either speakers or delegates at the conference, and they'll introduce themselves as they go along. Just a reminder that if you're interested in what you hear, please make sure that you book for next year as soon as you see the adverts coming out towards the end of 2024. So, Anju, I'm with Anju Sarpal, who is our Communications and Outreach Manager at ARG. And you've put together a fantastic event here, Anju. I think everybody's really enjoyed themselves. But, you know, this event, the Herp Workers Meeting, has got a history. This is probably the, fourth decade that it's in now? And, this is one of the biggest that we've ever run. What are your reflections from what you've seen, having organised the last few, and how that relates to the history of the event?
Oh, well, firstly, it's lovely to hear, so many lovely comments across the weekend. And as you say, Howard, quite rightly, every year this event gets larger and larger. But it's not a conference in the conventional sense, which I think gives it that beautiful USP of essentially it's a work family that's come together, and it's the community aspect. I can't think of many conferences, especially in the environmental sector now, where you can have students alongside consultants, statutory agencies and volunteers. This is essentially a talk shop that resonates throughout the year, which is why we do it annually. The conversations, the connections that people make, go far into the herpetological and ENGO sector conversations, meetings that we have online going further into the calendar. So I can see the essence of what we try to do every year as something really quite special, especially in an increasingly challenging social, environmental and political landscape. A very long answer for you.
No, I think you're absolutely right. And I'm lucky enough to have been to quite a number of these over the years, and I do see that. You've used the word that I always refer to, which is community. This is a big community, and I agree with you. It's nice to see people from so many different backgrounds.
Yeah. What's really nice to see, especially this year, is so many young faces and new faces, and we've really trying to, the whole inclusion debate within the environmental sector is an ongoing one. However, I think the Herp Workers Meeting, as it's commonly known, is one of those few opportunities where it truly is on an equal footing.
No, I'd agree with you. So, given that, looking into the future, how do you see this community developing, and do you see additional events being proposed as part of the calendar, or keeping this as an annual event?
Well, again, that word community comes up, doesn't it? Because I love it. Delegates come up to me and say, next year, can we have it here? And can we do this? That kind of feedback is gold dust. And we do take all of that into consideration. But when you look at the herpetological, core family, in inverted commas, that is a very small community. A lot of people here have either studied together, have had children together, they've grown up together, but now we've got this whole, it's breaking down barriers, the socio-economic barriers that people are experiencing. For example, next week we've got Women in International Women in Science Week coming up, and some of my colleagues and partners from partner agencies as well. We've got some amazing examples of young people that have had to do really, really crap jobs to get that leg into the environmental sector. And historically, we are known as a middle class
that is very
sector. True. So again, Herp Workers, we make it affordable. We make it accessible, so it's nice to see that that's working. There are people coming along that have really worked hard for a leg in the door to this community. So it's not about being exclusive, but it is, once you're part of it, when you get to speak to people, this resonates.
Brilliant. Yeah, and honestly, from my perspective, long may it continue, because it's something that I really value, and thank you for organising such a good conference this year, Anju.
Such lovely to hear. Thank you, Howard, from a veteran that knows what he's talking about.
Thank you. So, I'm with Chris Worgan and Maya Wellbeloved. These two good people are working on the district licensing schemes, and we've heard about that this morning in some of the presentations. So, Chris, could you just give a kind of overview of how the scheme operates for those that don't know?
Yes, so we as the Newt Conservation Partnership are the delivery body of the Nature Space Great Crested Newt District Licensing Scheme, whereby funding from development goes through the district license scheme. We take a proportion of that funding and use it to create compensation habitat, so pond creation, terrestrial habitat creation into ground, and then the landowners that sign up to take that compensation habitat, they can sign up to a 5-year or rolling 25-year agreement whereby the habitat is maintained. They receive an annual payment, so a financial benefit to them for signing into that scheme.
So Maya, you both cover different areas.
Yes.
So your area is Sussex?
Yep, both East and West Sussex.
Okay.
And a little bit of Surrey at the moment.
Okay, so what does your day look like then? If you're, from what Chris said, you're looking for areas where you can create compensation schemes, so presumably your day-to-day job is going and finding those areas and doing the work, is that right?
Yeah, there's a lot of chatting to landowners, having a look at their land and their site, and seeing what areas might be suitable. If they have any areas in mind on their land that maybe lie wet or are slightly more unproductive, if it's, for example, farmland. And then sort of doing our criteria search, so looking into the substrate, the hydrology, the catchment areas. There's lots of thought that goes into pond might be good to go. And then sort of taking it from there, really, making sure any water quality is clean, making sure that the ground and the substrate would actually hold water, and hopefully putting a pond in the ground.
And when you approach the landowners, do they generally already know about the scheme, or is it they do?
Yeah, so it's either through word of mouth, or if they get in touch with us, we'll initially sort of have a look at their land holding on our GIS. We'll also send through some fact sheets and some more additional information that they can read before we come to site. Also maybe a phone call before we initially meet. We go from there, really.
And the compensation is the financial compensation is attractive to them?
Yeah, I think it certainly helps. It is to help maintain and manage the our delivery. So trimming around the edges of the ponds, or whatever is in the management plan that we create after we've put the ponds in the ground. But yes, if they do sort of have multiple ponds or several hectares of habitat, that can maybe look quite nice in terms of the management payments.
Okay, brilliant. And Chris, so once that's all been agreed, then presumably the contractors move in to dig the ponds, is that right?
That's right, yeah. So once there's quite a long process going up to identifying the site, and working out the best place for the ponds to go into. And then once all that's been agreed, the proposal's been agreed, the agreement's been drawn up, then the contractors will go in, create the ponds to our specification, and do the habitat work ready, and then the agreement will then start from there for them then to be maintained.
Okay.
But we don't do any, so there's no planting that goes into the ponds, there's no introductions of anything, it's left to colonise naturally in the landscape.
And that makes sense. And so if great crested newts turn up, they turn up there of their own accord. So this is not mitigation, this isn't moving them newts from a development site and putting them in that pond.
Correct, it's creating the habitat for wildlife, great crested newts, to then...
But over the horizon of the project, it's already clear from something like 4 years worth of data that those ponds are becoming...
yes, and during the site selection process, under the licence, we need to meet certain criteria of where those ponds are with regard to strategic opportunity areas, and also impact risk zones, and the location within certain locations of existing great crested newt records. So there's lots of data that are considered on the site selection, which then increase the probability of those ponds being successful.
Excellent, and inhabited by great crested newts. It's at the end of the day, this is a compensation scheme, and we all got to bear in mind that, this is probably not what we all ideally want for that species, but it's not an ideal world. And in a world where we appreciate that development has to happen,
Yes.
what we don't want is for species like great crested newts to become demonised by standing in the way of that development. So this is a reasonable compromise in both of your opinions as to achieving that end, to allow things to happen, but also to create a future for the species.
Yeah, it's looking very much at a landscape scale, as so many schemes are now. So it's creating a network of sites that aren't going to be impacted by development in the long term. So it's looking at the long-term viability of those sites, making sure that those habitats can be maintained and can be suitable for great crested newts and all other biodiversity.
Brilliant.
Over for a long period of time. That's the concept.
Good, and it's a good scheme then, Maya, in your opinion.
Yeah, I'd definitely say so. Especially one of the criteria is if a development sort of runs over, for effect, one pond, they sort of give enough money to create for us to create 4 ponds. So it is a form of offsetting, and in areas where it's good, like land that's never going to be developed on, hopefully in the future, and hopefully creating an additional 3 ponds that are, safe basically for the future.
It's in offsetting, creating the right habitat, and also, more importantly, for the long term, because your horizon can be as long as 25 years, can't it?
Yes.
Which is fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you for that. It's a great introduction to the scheme, and good luck with what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Right, I'm with the 2 of the guys that have come over from Ireland, and both did excellent presentations. So Enya Herkasik and Ryan Montgomery. You guys presented on quite different topics yesterday, both equally interesting, but kind of different aspects of the story.
Absolutely.
So Enya was presenting on alpine newts and the invasion. We could call it an invasion of alpine newts.
It's an invasion at this point. In a couple of years, we could be up to our ears in alpines. It's looking like that. But then you have the opposite side with Ryan, which is definitely good news.
Yeah, Ryan's is a good news
The
story.
interesting thing about the Alpines was just chatting to all the people who, from different parts of England and even Wales, their experience of the Alpines is completely different
That's what struck
to
me.
what we're getting in
Yeah.
Ireland. Utterly different, because even last year there were talks where they're not actually spreading. You'd even think that palmates would be doing a lot better in Ireland, for example, but the Alpines really seem to be taking over, and in incredible densities, like 700 per square metre. And
That's
that
insane.
Happened, that happened, that's not one isolated event either. We've
We've had another one with 900, 900 per metre squared.
And there would have been more, but it's just because we run out of daylight.
There's 1 or 2 ponds that are quite confined in the UK that have quite high densities, but that is bonkers, isn't it?
Yeah, and it kind of speaks to possibly a lack of natural predators, possibly a lack of competition too, because the areas where we find these huge densities, there's either no smooth newts or very, very small amount of smooth newts.
Yeah. But is it also true that they because the ones on the mainland in the UK seem to be sort of confined to relatively small areas, but from what you said, they seem to be sort of spreading through the habitat?
Yes, so from 2021 we had 5 areas that we had highlighted and that we were kind of keeping an eye on and making sure that they weren't going further. We got a small bit of funding to try and expand that and try and get almost like a baseline range of where they were, and from 5 sites we now have an area of around 141 square kilometres, which is most definitely an underestimate.
141 square kilometres.
And that's only an awful and Tipperary. So the other thing to say is that's sort of mid-Ireland. There's alpines up in Antrim, where I'm from, on the other side of the country as well. So
and then across the Shannon too, we have another site in Galway that is a decent distance away from both Tipperary and Offaly.
Yeah.
So it seems like multiple releases almost have sort of happened under our nose.
And in the northern of Ireland, they're in Antrim, they're behaving in the same way, so you're getting them spread through the
So we've
habitat.
had a lot less time in the field, if you like.
Okay.
But what we have found is they're in a pine woodland. You wouldn't believe they're in there. The only reason they were discovered is because a friend of mine who's also in ARG, he was hired by a production company who were going to do some filming.
filming,
so he had to come to, and he goes, these are odd looking newts. hey ho, alpine newts. This was 2018 or possibly 16, I can't remember now. So that's where he discovered them, and I've been there subsequently. And these ponds that are just a tire track, and there's like 50 in that one, and then about 200 meters away there's another pond, and they're in there. So our search really hasn't expanded beyond those little ponds in that woodland. And I've walked around. There's not too many bodies of water, but they are next to a massive reservoir, which then feeds water for Larne and Belfast. So it's highly likely that they have managed to spread.
But they do use that sort of habitat in Europe, don't they? Mainland Europe. They're considered to be quite a woodland species.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the alpine newt to an extent. So it's an ongoing issue that
Yes.
needs to be kind of have a bit of surveillance applied to it. And
not only the surveillance too, but acknowledgement that it's a thing.
it's a problem.
As I was alluding to, without really getting into it.
I'll handle these questions.
yeah.
You can't say things yet.
I'm trying to, because I know who pays me. It's very, very difficult when the head honchos in the upper echelons aren't really willing to identify it as an invasive species and pointing to policy that does not pertain to Ireland in any way, shape or form.
Understand,
That's the first step, as far as I'm concerned.
The story up north then is a pretty similar one. I reported these to the invasive departments, and they're like, "Well, I only heard about these," and I was like, oh, "Okay." And then I sort of just said, "Look, we can help you out. We'll figure it out." And basically came back that, they're not Schedule 9, so we're not particularly interested. Even though they're Schedule 9 in England and Wales, they're not Schedule 9 in Northern Ireland. So we're not too fussed. And my head nearly fell off. And then I spoke to the wildlife officers, and they're like, we would love to, but resources, hands are tied. We're battling shrews. So it was a bit like banging your head off a wall, because we're very happy to help, but can't do things as a charity all the time,
exactly.
The shrews is a great example as well, because obviously smooth newts and alpine newts coincide perfectly in harmony on the continent.
But the shrew species don't, do they?
This is the thing. So we have a great white-toothed shrew in Ireland now, and we know that this is doing damage to our native newt species, or our native shrew species. And it's going to be the same. At least from what we can see, it's going to be a similar thing with the alpine newt.
Okay. Well, it's one to watch, and it'll be interesting to come back a year's time.
Another season. Hopefully, we'll get some funding. We'll be out there again, but see if we can get another good season out of it, and see what we're up to next year.
So, Ryan, let's talk about the common lizards. So, the work that you've been doing, common lizards, fantastic project that sounds like, because you've got people engaged in going out looking for common lizards. And let's be honest, that's not a common species on the island, is it, of Ireland?
No, it's one of those where obviously it's the same story, where the habitat's good, they're there. But the awareness of them, which I found remarkable, is that nobody really knows they're there. I'd say less than 1% of the population, and that's quite
and the same thing down south too.
Same thing down south.
Not even aware that we have this beautiful little lizard. But we really did drum up a lot of interest. I mean, I wasn't the only one doing common lizard. I was the only one doing common lizard stuff. But then Ulster Wildlife Trust and the other NGOs sort of got on the lizard bandwagon. And its profile really lifted in the time that we were there, like indirectly perhaps of our work. But people are really excited about them. Like it gave like really our landscape has something like that, and so it was very easy to get people to help. To get
was that people of all sort of ages and demographics?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone from learning disabilities to old boys they're going out with their cameras. Philip McCurlin is one special mention, because he's brilliant. He's always out looking about for everything, not just lizards. I have to say he carries the banner for all the NGOs. They all like to claim him as his own because he's so good. But then we had kids out and about, so we had a lot of school engagement, and that was great because I worked with land managers like the National Trust, built relationships with the National Trust. I went for walks with the rangers out in their patrols. We did dedicated training for separately amphibians and reptiles, but then also separately for surveying and monitoring, because they're quite dense topics to try and cover, so it's good to split them apart. And also this was during COVID, so for a lot of these rangers it was a really good event and a good excuse for you to get them together again. And that was always kind of the intention of the project. It wasn't just about raising the profile of the lizard and conserving it, really trying to build a network and sort of a sense of working together. And I guess that's the good thing about being a pilot project coming in, is there's real humbleness to the way you approach things. So you don't have the ego, because you really are great. We'd love to help you. Can you help us? More importantly, we'd like to help you. And that really was felt by, because we work with National Trust, Queen's University Belfast Marine Biology Labs. We had nature days. It's just like, lads, do you want to come down? Like, absolutely. And then we got piled into this church. There's an old church at Grey Abbey, it's called. And we got the volunteers who look after the abbey. They just, on their own backs, like, okay, well, they brought down their cotton weaving stuff and showed traditional Irish weaving stuff. And then the National Trust were there, and the Queen's Marine Biology Labs were there. So all of a sudden, it came and said, we'll try and have a little event here. It became quite an impressive event. And despite it being a rural area, as it was, the peninsula is a funny place. It goes, as soon as you cross down the peninsula, down the south in Strangford, it becomes like time travel. You've gone back about 2 decades. So to get engagement in really essentially a small town of 100 odd families was really quite impressive for us anyway. So we're very pleased because you do these events and sometimes people don't even show up. So
No, that's good. And so you've got those people, you've got the multiplier effect then, because those people are all looking out and being advocates for the species. And
exactly.
And you found distributions that you didn't know existed.
Yeah, and that one was great. So as I moved to our final year, so it was based over 3 years, 1 year in Slieveguillion, right down in sort of Armagh, then County Down, Newry, Mourne and Down, the big Mourne Mountains, and then up to Strangford. So we had no lizard sightings on the peninsula. There are a couple of really good potential habitats along the peninsula, and I'm sure they must be there, just getting out there and looking for them. But I was able to kind of drum up a bit of a competition, even with the school kids on the Facebook page, and who wants to be the first to get one on the peninsula. And Philip McCurlin took on that straight away. He was out there the following week, and he was like, "Yeah, find them." And I was like,
"Yeah, that's brilliant."
But it was a chance encounter. It was a bog, like the size of the room we're in now. Like it's just a little island.
Yeah.
And they were there.
But that's the thing, you do quite often find those little bits of exactly the right habitat that they're going to use. So
precisely.
Yeah.
So, but then off the back of that, because that's in North Down, and Newton Ards would be the major sort of town in there, and then on there's Scrabo Tower, which was an old quarry. I think it was sandstone, but we could check that. Abandoned since, but it's a little wildlife haven now, nesting birds, all sorts of stuff. But there's lizards up there, and people wouldn't believe you. And there's sort of a golf club up there too as well. So I tried to get permission to get in the golf club and walk around, but I haven't got there as far as that yet. But when people realise we're stuff in Scrabo, we got the Newton Ards Council, basically, District Council, and I got the National Trust Rangers, and that site itself is owned and managed by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency. So there's 3 different bodies right away. Got them all to work together, and we've got some scrub management done with other volunteers that I brought in from a college or whatever. So, and every year I'd say, here, who wants to, I just message these people, we're going to do this, this and this, and they go, yeah, no worries. Got a good relationship with the Environment Agency. They go, yeah, here's just sign the paper, away you go, and because we're also part of ARG, all of those questions about insurance and stuff, all those things are covered. So it makes the process so easy, really, and people just want to get stuck in. The really exciting thing up there recently was when we did we did a bit of work in the winter and a bit of work in the summer. And there's a TV show that gets filmed on UTV, which is Ulster Television, our version of ITV, Keepers of the Loch. So on Strangford Loch, they have all sorts of people doing all sorts of amazing things. So we got filmed for our habitat work on those days. So I'm hoping we'll be televised in this spring.
Chris Packham will be sweating, so he will.
Yeah, Packham will be sweating. He'd be lucky he wasn't there when I was giving the speech anyway. But so yeah, it was really positive. As I say, we're trying to build a legacy with it as well. The legacy is the focus on Scrabo at the minute and trying to get people out and about. But I'm essentially I'm the only guy out there, and so that's kind of where we're at. If we had a bit of a team with a bit more commitment, it would make life much easier. Yeah. But that's where we're up to. But things are still happening.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. No, I mean, getting news from you guys is so important for these meetings. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for sort of taking the effort to come over.
Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. It's great to have another perspective on things.
Well, we're going to have to just suggest that people make the journey over to Ireland for Herp workers one day. I know it's been said in the past to be trials to be done, but I know a lot of people find it difficult to make it over, but here we show up every year.
Hey, there's an idea. Let's leave it on that, because that could be a really good idea.
Better still, we could find the midpoint in the Isle of Man.
That's right, Douglas Isle of Man.
We can vote them on, and that'd be beautiful.
Yeah, watch this space for future Herp workers.
We'll suggest that one very quietly and loudly.
Cough, cough.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. No, you're welcome.
So I'm with Steph Davis, and Steph, you're our newest trustee for ARG, which is great news, and welcome. So the couple of things I wanted to ask you, your background and your current employment is in education.
It is.
And in the introduction yesterday morning from Chris, and in a lot of the things that we've been doing, we've seen it in some of the other presentations, the importance of education and engaging the next generation of the people that need to take over from us, if you like, is just so vital. I just wanted to get your kind of view on that and the role that education needs to play in this whole environment.
Yes, I'm a big advocate of instilling that passion and sense of ownership in the younger generation to take on the fight towards preserving species. Herpetofauna is something I've always been interested in, and I think that stemmed from having some amazing role models and teachers when I was at university. And it's something I'm hoping to instill in my students. So I've not too long ago made the switch from informal to formal education, but I'm quite keen to bring in my own agenda of native species conservation to the topics that I'm speaking of. And again, I just think that interest and sort of encouraging them to get involved in native species conservation work is the only way we can really progress and ensure that species are safeguarded into the future in this changing world that we're living in.
Yeah, brilliant. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. But you've got to have things that you can take them to and engage them in. What sort of things have you got in mind to actually get them out there doing the stuff, if you like?
Yes, so the theory stuff's important for their qualification, but I'm a big fan of giving them experiences, real world experiences, and making connections with people in industry. So I've taken some of our higher level 5 learners out to a site local to us that is being heavily managed for great crested newts. We've also got a healthy population of great crested newts on site at our college, so it's about giving them transferable skills, training them up and getting them wanting to undertake it of their own steam as well. So it's all about sort of empowering them to set up their own projects on site, on college. So that's my next step, is to build more conservation work and more practical habitat management stuff into their day-to-day life at college, get them to take ownership of it and really just run with it and champion it to the rest of the college lower down as well, including the lower levels.
That's brilliant. And I suppose where you are, because you live in North Wales.
I do.
And so you've got the North Wales sites up there, the great crested newts, you've got natterjacks, you've got sand lizards.
Yes.
So there is scope to kind of go further with that whole concept, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I've got a trip in the pipeline for April to go and do a natterjack survey evening, get them trained up on how to identify them, and hopefully that will promote a few of them to volunteer and do some habitat management work up there. That's how I got into native species conservation. So I did my 3rd year project at university on the scrapes up there on the North Wales coast. So again, it's just building those opportunities in to a curriculum that is very full of formal learning for exams, but it's also about seeing the bigger picture and giving them opportunities to get involved, because without their buy-in, then we're very limited as to the reach that we can have if we don't have young people fully on board with what we're doing.
Excellent. Right, final quick question.
Yes.
We're at the Herp Workers Meeting, and this is, I understand, the second one you've been to. You came to Llandudno last year.
I did.
So what are your thoughts?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's an absolutely amazing experience to not only learn what's going on in native species conservation in an area I'm passionate about, but it's really good to network with like-minded people, make connections. Last year I actually got a few of the delegates to do a guest speak for us at the end of our academic year and sort of open up opportunities for students after their life at college. So quite a few of them have gone on now to do herpetology at university, but quite a few of them are going on to native species conservation, ecological work. It just broadens their horizons a little bit beyond just zoos and exotics, which is what the course is really aimed at. So it's just a fantastic community as well. So it's really nice to be amongst like-minded, passionate people, fan the flames for another year of conservation work.
That's brilliant, and I'm a great advocate of that community as well. I'm I'm really pleased that you've got sufficient passion to want to really contribute to it by being a trustee for ARG, so thank you for that.
Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to being involved.
Brilliant, thanks Steph.
Thank you.
So we're at the end of the afternoon on Sunday. Jim, I'm with Jim Foster, our Conservation Director, or ARC's Conservation Director. You must be tired. It's been 2 long days.
Yeah, I'm tired but happy.
Good. And you hosted the Have I Got Newts for You quiz last night, which is always a highlight of the Herp Workers Meeting. But what I really wanted to ask you is your reflections on the past 2 days.
Thanks, Howard. Well, I think it's been a great weekend. I've had some fantastic conversations with people who are just really happy to be amongst other folks working and interested in conservation of reptiles and amphibians, and to have that chance to get together with other people that share their interest.
It does really feel like a community, doesn't it? And that's what I get from it. It is a fantastic community of like-minded people, as you say.
Totally agree. And one of the fantastic things about this year's meeting is we've had a lot of folks who are coming along for the first time. And often they're quite young people who are just entering the conservation of reptiles and amphibians, either as a pastime, something they do, in their weekends and evenings, or in some cases it's part of their job. And that's exactly what we want to see. These new folks coming into the field and engaging with, us old lags who've been doing it for years. And I think the experience works both ways. So, these folks are maybe picking up from some of the history that they're learning about, some of the new presentations, new research projects, conservation projects that we've heard about. But also they're bringing challenges, they're bringing ideas. And I find that fascinating that we are, we're learning from these new entrants to the field too.
I think that's really important because, conservation has to be about the future. Yes, the past can inform us, but that's all we've got is the future. And would you say that there was an increase, in your opinion, in the number of what I refer to as partner organisations, so the other land managers? There does seem to be quite good representation from those sorts of organisations.
Yeah, I totally agree. So we've had good representation this weekend from, for example, several wildlife trusts here, county wildlife trusts. We've had folks from National Trust. We've got water companies. We've got local authorities, and that's really good to see because that group of organisations actually control a huge amount of really important land for reptiles and amphibians.
They do.
And to get the recognition for those organisations to be able to, resource their staff to come along to the meeting, I think it's a really positive thing. There are so many demands on those people's time, and yet they're giving up their weekends to come along, and the organisations are funding them to come along, and they're engaging in the conversation. It's a good thing.
That's good. Yeah. No, I think it is good that we've had a successful meeting, and I think this really sets us to continue this type of meeting into the future. So it's been a good weekend.
Good, I agree.
Yeah, thank you, Jim.
Thanks.
So we're right at the end of Sunday, and I'm with Angie Julian, the coordinator of ARG-UK, and Rob Gandler of
the Herpetological Society of Ireland, so the HSI. We'll keep it short.
You've enjoyed yourself this weekend?
It's been fabulous. It's been a really good meeting.
Yeah, Rob?
Yeah, we love these meetings, as you can well know. And as everybody knows, we always have a great time when we come over. So
they're good. They're good gigs.
They are.
One of the things that I've reflected on, it's still ringing in my head, was Chris Packham's opening address yesterday, and the fact that we've got to join up, which we know anyway, but we've also got to engage more people. We've got to get this next sort of cohort of people coming through, because you guys are younger than me, but we're all getting older. But we need that next generation of people coming through. And I just wondered whether that came out as strongly to you, and whether you're seeing that reflected in the people that are coming to this meeting now.
So I think 2 things. I think you have to model what you want. So if you want young people to come, we have to appear to be young. So if you've got a panel that's all quite elderly or predominantly of one type, then that's what you start to model. So I think the fantastic thing is we have younger women,
diverse category of people from all backgrounds. It's not just hardcore academic, and this is like we spoke about last year.
Yeah.
There's bits of everything for everybody. There's field practitioners, there's community scientists, there's the academics, like there's professors, there's policy workers, there's guys from like semi-state institutions, there's like guys from like Natural England and Nature Scotland and a lot of the meetings that come in. So there's a really good mix of people. There's always a good mix which is reflected in like the range of talks that are given and who they're given by. So like you get a lot of young people up to have a go. Everybody's treated with respect, which you don't get with all the other groups.
That's true.
And if you look at what Darren Naish was putting on this huge Twitter following yesterday when he was live tweeting from the event, he just put up like yesterday evening, he was like, herpetologist conventions are generally the best because everybody's so friendly and welcoming. And I think that's always been the case.
That's right, yeah.
And I was saying to the lads, because one of them had asked, like, what Herp Workers Meeting is this for you? And it's my 12th if you include the online ones over COVID.
Yeah.
I was like, and this is Angie's fault because Angie originally invited me in 2013.
Yeah,
I have to say, the first year I came, we had a formal dinner, and I walked in the room, and it appeared to me to be full of men with beards talking about great crested newts. I made a vow to myself that the next year there would be more women, more younger people, more diversity, and we've worked really, really hard to make it welcoming. I think like the formal dinner, the gala dinner, Have I Got Newts for You? It's fun, it's a real leveller. And I think, as Rob says, what's really, really important is that you don't feel you can't approach anyone. You can talk to anyone.
Yeah, that's very true.
From the highest to the lowest, as it were, because there is no highest or lowest. We are on a level.
Yeah.
And I think we're almost unique in communities for being that. And I think that's why this meeting is special. But if you want more younger people, I think, could we offer bursaries for students?
Yeah.
Could we have a student session where either students or early career researchers specifically are asked to talk about their work, just one session even. So you've got that sort of positive encouragement. So when we do the call for papers, I think an awful lot of people, it couldn't be me, I couldn't stand up there and talk, or my work's not good enough, or I haven't finished, or it just isn't for me. But I think this idea that you could actually make a session proactively for...
That's a good point. I think the other thing that is that was reflected in the meeting, that there were presentations about the community engagement that's gone on. There was the lady from Scotland who presented on that topic, and Ryan also presented on what he's done with common lizards in Northern Ireland. So there were stories about engagement in the field, and I think that's equally important. But I do take your point that we need to work out the mechanisms to encourage more young people into this meeting. I think the other thing is that with all of this, the people are there to facilitate what we're all trying to do, and we mustn't lose sight of the fact of the species that we're doing.
You made that point in our workshop, and we were talking about why would you verify, why would you record, and you said, but first and foremost, we're here to conserve the animals. And I don't think we've ever lost sight of that, but perhaps you're feeling that we need to be putting the animals front and centre.
We do, and the reason I say that is because there are lots of issues that do involve, obviously they involve people, but they involve organisations as well. And I think when you start getting organisations that need to work better together, that can sometimes be a barrier to that sort of thing. And I'm not talking about just within the herpetological community, I'm talking about in the wider nature sphere as well.
I think connecting government policy makers.
Exactly, which is what was highlighted in Enya's presentation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's,
And everybody is vying for the same small pockets of funding.
Yeah.
If the guys who make the ultimate calls were actually going to fund and legitimately wanted to fund change, there wouldn't be a need for the herp guys to be pitted against the back guys, to be pitted against, the rewilders and vice versa for the same tiny pocket of money. That's always in, and like we see this, we're on this perpetual pilot study. No one wants to fund long-term study at all. Whether it's monitoring, whether it's habitat restoration, here's a small pot of money, do something for a year.
Yeah.
We don't really care about whether it's the best project ever invented, because we're not going to fund you from next year onwards anyway. But we won't tell you that until you finish the project.
Well, look, there's some interesting challenges there, but I think the beauty of this is that we have got a strong community amongst the people that have come to this meeting, and long may it continue.
And I think you're right, we need to be looking out all the time. We don't anyone to say that's a strong community and it's too strong and there's a wall around those people. We don't need walls, we don't need barriers, and we need to keep encouraging people to come in. And we talked about diversity, but just everybody really.
Yeah.
We don't want to set this is what a herpetologist looks like, but we're there for everyone.
Strong and open community then.
Strong, open and inclusive.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah, but I think it's always been like that. Like we have Sadie with us this year, who's a student.
Yeah.
We always try and encourage our students when we get them, like, to attend, meet people, network, see what's been done in other places, speak to people who may have already done something similar to what they're doing, like other students in particular, because there is the poster session still, there's still a lot done for, like, compared to other groups, like poster sessions and, promo of student work and research. We're very kind of at the top of that level of, like, promotion, and in-house is like, well, if you need the opinion from a professor, there he is over there. Go and have a chat.
Go and talk to him.
Or go and have lunch with him. Like, we could do more, absolutely.
We could
but
do
I think
more.
we
So at the meeting, the SEH meeting we went to in the summer, they had a poster session. I went to a poster session and they had sort of cheese and wine, and so it was an actual session for like an hour or 2 hours or whatever. But there were drinks, there was snacks. So you're encouraged to go and stay, whereas I think what we've tended to do is put the posters up, and if you happen to stop and look at them, it's not being made part of the programme.
Okay,
we've only got a weekend, and time is short, and people like to go and glam up for the gala dinner. But equally, I think we should find time in that weekend for those.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, are we going to extend it into a 4-day week like the SEH meeting?
Dear me.
What sort of carry-on would be gotten up to then?
Yeah. Well, let's leave that thought hanging. But,
leave that thought hanging.
Maybe 2 days is enough for everybody.
But we look forward to next year. But there's some great ideas there, and we do need to spend the year thinking about that and make sure that we keep changing. We need to keep changing. We need to keep this.
We need to always be thoughtful and reflective, and never feel we've arrived. This is never it. We can always do better.
Yeah, excellent. All right, great to have your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Howard. Always good to see you.
Thanks,
and
Howard.
You.